Hi, this is Bob Klaza. David Weinberg is resigning or retiring from the being the editor of the Boston Audio Society Journal.
That's correct.
Wow, how long has he been doing that?
Since dinosaurs roamed the earth. And when God was a boy.
Well, he's certainly done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's the reason why it's been very hard to replace him. He's such a tough act to follow.
Indeed. Ken.
Hey, Nick. Hope you don't mind. I'm wolfing down my dinner.
Just so you know, what you eat disappears. It's erased by the background processing of the screen.
Oh, really?
As you're eating it. So
that's pretty amusing. So I aim to entertain. Mm-hmm. If our regular planned program isn't good enough, it's to me.
They already have those sites on the internet where you watch these people eat food. Isn't that amazing? There's a term for it, and I forget what it is.
I don't know.
Well, back in the old days, before the internet, there was a phone system where you could call up and leave a message, or you could call in and listen to messages. And if you leave a message, it's called 1-800-I-CONFESS. Yeah. And then you call in, listen to other people's confessions. It costs nothing to leave the confession, but you have to pay to listen to other people's confessions. I thought that was just a brilliant business idea.
No, that's a spin-off from the sex lines, I guess, back then. So is Alvin going to be lying down again during the meeting?
Hey, Dave.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
Well, I just, this is Mitch. I just came to a realization this afternoon. I was listening to a bunch of old music on earphones, and I heard so much that I'd never heard before. A lot of the little detail that gets lost in the wash of all the other music is mostly popular music, but it was still amazing. I have to go back and listen to everything again.
Yeah, it's like hearing it for the first time. I didn't hear that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like watching a movie a second or third time and say, I didn't catch that the last time.
Mic test, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Yeah, but I got to make sure it's coming through the headphones and not the speakers. Oh, it's coming through the speakers.
Jack, I see you're in a concert hall. What are you performing tonight? Yep. Guess he doesn't have his headphones on.
Is anybody talking?
Nope. Quiet group today.
Well, my connector's not going to the headphones. Who can give me a countdown?
1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Direct your audio. Who wants to hear my voice? Nobody, but you got it anyways.
That's a count up.
Yeah.
David, how long has David Weinberg been the editor?
I haven't looked at 25 years. I don't know. It's something like that. I haven't
Yeah,
looked at the exact.
well over 20 anyways.
One subject to discuss.
You know, while we're waiting, there's a series on Apple TV called For All Mankind. Has anybody been watching that?
I saw that.
There's a rocket launch from out of the ocean. I think it's the last of the second season. And it was an incredible effect that they did. And the sound was just unbelievable. You saw this ocean scene just out in the middle of nowhere, and you saw a little bit of something sticking up from the water. And when you heard the countdown and the launch, all of a sudden this thing expands into a massive, massive rocket ship heading to Mars. And the noise it made was incredible. It was quite the effect they did. I thought of that when we talked about the countdown.
So there's are there new episodes? Because I saw this years ago, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was just catching up. I think they just put out season 3, I think.
All right.
And it was the end. And you know what? You had to sit through. People say, well, why do you watch the credits? Because sometimes you get a little Easter egg during the credits at the end. And this one appeared at the end. The first show of the third season had that same scene, but you were watching it through somebody else watching TV. And it was nowhere near the effect of seeing how they did it at the end of the second season and doing it as if they had a camera out there in the ocean filming this thing take off.
Well, as I recall, the sound levels generated by the Apollo moon missions, the Saturn V rocket, actually exceeded the capability of air to handle it without distorting. It was over 165 dBA.
I could believe that.
And that was, I can remember, oh boy, is this dating me? I can remember Walter Cronkite talking about the launches, and he was something like a half a mile from the launch site in Cape Canaveral. Well, it was Canaveral or Kennedy then anyway. And you could tell from the way he was responding, and I think some of his comments, that the glass from the building he was in, because it overlooked the launch site, was literally almost on the verge. I think he was concerned it was going to shatter.
Yeah.
Noise.
I can certainly believe that.
Jack Reed, where is that photo from? It looks like Australia almost.
Well, no, it's not quite that far away. It's Chicago.
Oh, okay. Never been there.
It's a little some distance from Boston. I'm one of the BAS members who doesn't live in the hub, as I think Boston area is sometimes called with some justification. Although some critics say it's called a hub because it's the only part of the wheel that doesn't move. But anyway,
hub of the universe, that you were aware.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show off one of my favorite rooms for listening to musical performance. And my background picture is a recent picture of an opera house on the south edge of our downtown district, formerly called the Loop. The district is. The theater is modestly called the Auditorium Theater, as though it were the only one ever anywhere. But the architects were not a modest pair. But I particularly wanted to show it off to Bostonians who I think are much more familiar and loyal to, and with reason, a box-type concert hall. Now, of course, this is an opera house, which is not quite the same thing, but it's anything but a box. You see you see the stage opening in the lower left part of the image where the stage is dark. And I'm going to see if I can maybe get myself out of here.
Well, okay. I haven't done this before, but
when was this hall built?
This was built late 19th century. I'm just going to slouch down here.
Those exposed
just turn your camera off.
Oh, doesn't
if I turn the camera off,
just you have a shutter or a piece of paper over the lens.
Yeah, that's background. That's background, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. There
we go. Yeah, I always look for electronic ways to do things when putting your thumb over the lens is not quite as bad as putting your finger in the socket, which
you can buy, or they give away cheap lens covers. They're about an inch by a half an inch, and they slide over the camera.
They slide over the camera. I'm not too surprised. I've got enough scrap paper in this room, but I'm just going to keep my thumb up there.
Post-it note and stick it on the camera.
That's right. Yep.
So are those exposed light bulbs around the proscenium?
Yes, those are acoustical arches, not structural arches. They hang from trusses, which span the big box the whole place is built in. As I say, you can see now the dark stage in the lower left part of the image, and you can see how steeply raked up the seats are. This is for much more steep than is necessary even for excellent sight lines. And you notice that the steepness of the rake increases towards the back of the hall. This is all for acoustical reasons.
I wish stage theaters were raked that much. There's very few Broadway theaters that have a good enough rake to avoid heads obscuring the view.
That's right. This is much more steep even than is required for that, and it gets more and more steep towards the top. And you can see in the top of the theater, there is a section with some more lights on the front of it, which is raised up even more. This opera house seats 4,000. And there have been times when I have been in there about halfway back, which is where I like to sit. We are farther back than that, where the camera was for this shot. But the Royal Philharmonic was trying to get to Chicago on tour, and the players arrived early, and one of them stood on the front apron of the stage without a microphone. The Royal Philharmonic, of course, they invented the language, and he spoke very distinctly, but he apologized, explained that the orchestra was finally there, was half an hour late, and that the instruments for the orchestra were expected in another half hour. And this is the vagaries of air travel and touring in North America. But he was quite charming. And at the end, he had no microphone. We were about we had filled the place about halfway back. So at the end of his speech, he paused a moment. He said, "Can you all hear that?" We drew in our breath and said in stage whisper, "Yes." And the little man jumped because we'd understood every word all throughout this place. And he didn't even raise his voice. It's just a conversational tone.
Was this hall designed before there was any sound reinforcement electronically?
Sorry, was it his fault there was no
was the hall built before there was any amplification?
Yes, it's late 19th century construction, about 1890.
By the way, the electric light bulb exposed like that reminds me of Grand Central Terminal, built about the same time. And this was sort of deliberate to show off that they had electric lights.
This was not exactly a show off. They wanted to do it. They wanted to make this the best theater they could. They had built many, many before. The architectural firm's name is Adler and Sullivan. Dankmar Adler and Louis Sullivan.
He's the famous architect who worked with the Chicago architect, name slips my mind, who did modern American house design.
Well,
Is that Lloyd Wright?
Frank Lloyd Wright was I think he was a protege of Louis Sullivan.
Yes.
Oh.
Frank Wright came from Wisconsin and got a job as chief draftsman for Sullivan. And Wright was still working with Adler and Sullivan when this theater went up. And there's here and there's some designs which I don't show, which show Wright's proclivity for abstract geometry. Maybe later on, I can show you some close-ups, or you can enlarge the image for your whole screen. But you'll notice among I told you about the seating, the idea of the arches is to have a low front to the ceiling rather than a high ceiling, as in the, the Leipzig Gewandhaus, or the, which I think Symphony Hall is influenced by. I'm not too sure about its ancestry, but the Musikverein Saal.
I thought Symphony Hall was modeled after the concert hall in Vienna.
Yeah, the Wiener Friends of Music. Yeah, I think so. That's essentially a long box. Adler believed in the theater should be longer than it was wide, but the idea of the low front ceiling, if this is not too long, was to catch sound, to reflect sound to the back down to the front of the audience sufficiently quickly that the audience would hear it soon after the direct sound from the stage, and it sounded like reinforcement. You didn't hear it as a separate sound. But you see that the ceiling goes up farther towards the back, the upper right. And this is one of Adler's ideas as well, which he used elsewhere. I might point out that there are no boxes in this opera house unless you look straight across. The boxes are on the side. The architects didn't want to put any boxes in there. They said, we are Democrats, small d, Democrats. Nobility is over. What are the boxes for? And the backers of the project, of course, rich men, mistook themselves, since they were rich. They thought they'd bought some nobility, although some of them did not. I have to give credit to Ferdinand Peck, who had a dry goods store on Michigan Avenue, who was one of the Democrats. But they thought about it, and Sullivan's idea, form follows function, gave him an idea. He said, basically, what are these boxes for? They're for the people who think they're special to be seen in, not necessarily to see the show. Okay, we'll put in some boxes along the side. They can sit in there and be seen by the audience in alternation to the show. The audience will have a choice. So this compromise is the way the place was built. And you can see some boxes straight across the rows in the middle of the image. I think I probably said.
Can you use your mouse to point out the areas you're talking about?
I don't see how to. I don't know how to do that. It's not a live image. It's been stored in the. It's been stored in the preferences, the Zoom preferences.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna have to jump up and point to it with your hand.
Say what?
You have to jump up now. Your hand.
Okay, let's see what I can do.
There you go.
Weatherman on TV, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what.
Okay.
Somebody got a green screen?
He wants to know where the boxes are.
No, I don't have a green screen going here.
I'm just
kidding. Right behind his head.
The answer is the boxes are right behind your head, right?
Yeah, it's right. That's correct. Far end.
That's correct. There they are.
Yeah.
No, this is not working awfully well.
No, we can see it.
It worked.
Jacques, what's the name of that hall again?
Actually, your mouse does work on Zoom.
It does?
Yes. Try it.
Do you see my mouse?
No.
No, but he's not sharing his screen. He's got a background. That's different. If the speaker has the this slide on PowerPoint, he can share a screen, then he can manipulate it.
Yeah, I mean, you can
I
figure
don't
it
have
out.
it on PowerPoint.
Shouldn't we be moving on a bit to the
Yeah.
open forum?
And I'm
Yeah,
sorry, what was the
yeah.
name of the place, Jack?
Oh, the auditorium. you said.
The auditorium. That's all.
It's called today it's called the Auditorium Theater. It's theater inside the large building, which itself is referred to as the auditorium
Okay.
sometimes, and also as wrapped around the theater. It had originally a hotel on two sides and an office building on the west side. The idea to bring in income for the property when the theater was dark. But the Chicago Opera Company held forth here. And originally the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, called the Theodore Thomas Orchestra at the time, would play here as well. And I could tell you a lot more about it, but maybe someday I'll prepare a presentation. But we have another one. We have a different agenda. So maybe I'll shut up now and
It just happened to remind me of the Opera House in Sydney, which I happened to be in the late 2019 timeframe, because it also has a very steep rake to the seats.
Oh, really?
And it's probably about the same size in terms of population. It's quite large.
That's a Gehry theater, is it not? Frank Gehry?
Don't know for sure. I didn't look into who actually did the design work, except that it's now a national historic site or an international historic site.
I think it's quite a famous image of nesting.
Yeah, the nesting shells.
Nesting shells, yeah.
Right as you come into Sydney Harbor, it's amazing. And then right behind it is the bridge where, if you've stayed up late enough to watch them celebrate New Year's, they launch fireworks off the bridge, but they also have a hike, I guess. If you really are crazy enough, you can walk over the top. It's an arched bridge, and you can actually walk with a guide all the way to the top of the arch and look down into the harbor as the cruise ships and stuff come into the harbor. It's kind of awesome. We didn't have the guts to go up on the bridge.
Is it time to move on, you think?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. That's okay.
Take it away, John.
Well, Ken, you're running the show over there. You want to start it up, and then I'll chime in as necessary.
Do we want to have open forum first?
Yeah. Nick, why don't you do the meeting and
wrap the gavel.
I wish I had one.
We'll have to fix that.
Okay, let's start the meeting. We'll start with open forum in a minute, but as was pointed out, David Weinberg has ceased to be our editor, and Dave Hadaway, with the help of David Moran, will be picking that up. But the amount of work that they do will be different and limited, and so we still are looking for an editor or an assistant editor to help out and maybe pick up the reins. So keep that in mind. You'll have a lot of assistance in learning how to do what Dave Weinberg did, and there's even some modest compensation for your time. With that said, let's go.
I'd like to say, may I say a few words?
Yeah.
Okay, so the last issue produced was, in the words of somebody, spectacular. And there's an awful lot of material in it, and that does look quite impressive. I have to point out it took 11 months to come out, though. So it didn't really help the timeliness of the BAS speaker. And as far as I can tell, Weinberg put everything in that issue. There's no storehouse of unreleased material, so we're starting from ground zero. So I would like to put out another issue in a fairly timely fashion, and we'll hope that people will contribute stuff. I have a promise of a meeting summary, which is more or less the core of an issue. And there's a number of small open forum items, but we do need articles from people if they can write about their audio experiences. I write something every month, sometimes short, sometimes long, and other people should have experiences they're willing to relate as well.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the article by John Allen in terms of what the Bell Labs did early on with the 3 microphones across the front of the stage with an acoustic curtain, and then having
Right.
people. One of the things that I was curious about, and I don't think anybody else has done it, was has anybody tried the same thing using, say, the Blumlein crossed figure 8s technique, or maybe the Decca Tree, which is kind of a variation of the 3 microphone placement, just to see what that does by comparison, because even, I suppose, even the ORTF technique, which is widely used, all of these are kind of practical current recording techniques for, you know, what shall we say, minimalist recordings, not the multi-mic stuff that was done back a while back with a lot of orchestras. And I was just curious, maybe we should try a project like that. I don't know whether we could convince Symphony Hall to let us bring in acoustic curtains to just put across the front of the stage, but it would be interesting to see how the various microphones setups display the depth. And that seemed to be the interesting part of the article, was the depth of field of some people. The whole rear part of the stage was heavily brought forward in the 3 microphone technique.
Was this the article that tried to get users to determine, without saying it, through a sound system where the source was?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the speaker, and it's probably one of the major articles, because John evidently kind of, it was comparable to some of the discussion he had before the last Boston Philharmonic concert with Ben Zander, where they did the Bruckner Third. He and Zander, where he was in Zander's home actually, and they did the presentation from there.
The Mahler Third, you mean?
Yeah, the Mahler Third. Sorry, and he walked through a bit of it, but the whole article is really quite comprehensive and kind of interesting in terms of his discussions with Paul Klipsch. And of course, Paul was a big fan of basically a 3-channel system. And we've actually had Jack Renner, who used the system as well as a BAS presenter a number of years ago. And in fact, I'm shocked. Jack Renner lives probably about 5 miles from where I do here in Rhode Island now. But he is fully retired, and I think age is catching up with him like the rest of us. But it was just a thought that it would be interesting to see how other microphone techniques compared with the 3 spaced omnis. I guess RCA in their early orthophonic stereo days used the same technique, probably again based on the stuff that came from Western Electric and the research they had done.
Interesting here, John Allen speaking. I just joined the meeting. That the Mercury recordings, the famous Mercury recordings, were made with 3-channel. Oh, excuse me, I've got to go. My wife is calling.
I guess one thing going forward, David Weinberg was quite interested in video, and so he presented a lot of video material in the speaker. I don't really have that much interest myself, but he did send an article in one of the trade magazines about, like, what is it called, ATSC3, the latest version of over-the-air digital broadcasting. And I'd like to find some people, 1 or 2 people that would like to do summaries of things like that. He didn't summarize it, he just sent the article. It's not intended to reprint the speaker, but to be summarized.
Well, what I know of ATSC3 is it's attempting to improve the signal carrying of ATSC that we use now, but to add elements comparable to the internet, where the user can opt in to 2-way communication, especially for advertisers to do what they do on the internet, target ads to you if you're a fan of that.
And I guess higher definition video as well.
And deliver it to cell phones.
Oh yeah, and it'll deliver 4K.
Yeah.
But I think you need an internet connection for this, the higher functions.
I believe so.
Yeah, good as cell phones too. So
What's the point then?
as long as you have
The
a
problem with ATSC3 is there's no requirement to be backward compatible. So all the tuners that have been installed in all digital TVs will no longer work unless the broadcast station keeps the current ATSC and ATS3 running in parallel. The challenge is the FCC has drastically reduced the bandwidth for TV from originally 82 channels down to about 38 channels. And they're reopened. They've basically forced broadcasters to go back to the VHF band, channels 2 to 13, which carry very differently from the UHF.
Yeah, they also use some kind of multiplexing because you look on a conventional TV and you can find, if you're watching one of the local channels like channel 4 or channel 7 or channel 2, although I don't see it that much on channel 2 down here in Rhode Island, but channel 4 and some of the local stations here have like 4 or 5 broadcast signals.
Oh yeah, they're chopping up the bandwidth and
10-3.
Yeah, the problem is they don't deliver super high definition pictures. They try to reserve one channel that has something close to HD, but the others are compressed considerably.
And that's obvious when you watch some of this stuff.
That's why they're a fan of showing old TV.
Yeah.
So I wonder, would you, Ken Wax, be interested in doing some summaries of articles on video? I mean,
it depends what I come across. I really haven't done an exhaustive study, but
I'm talking about sending you articles.
What I will offer to do now is write up a summary of the presentation I gave of the Consumer Electronics Show a couple of months ago.
Okay.
On that, I'll see as I have time.
That's plenty of work, but I'm looking for somebody that's knowledgeable about video that would do some summaries of articles that Weinberg has supplied.
I sent a couple of links out to Wikipedia. Has good information on ATSC3. So if anybody wants to look that over, that'll pretty much
chat box, folks.
Anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, the difficulty I notice with what we have to deal with Dave Gahn is that he's a member of Mensa, he's a member of SMPTE, he's involved in CES to an extent, although I guess they don't call it CES anymore.
Also CEDIA.
And he's also got contacts across a whole bunch of other organizations that he could draw on. And regrettably, we're going to lose all that.
Well, I'm hoping it will continue to provide some material, but that material doesn't really help the BIS, particularly as far as...
Is David Weinberg all right, or has he just had too much work?
He's had too much. He's just, after 25 years, he's had enough.
I think much of that material is superfluous to the goals of the BIS, which is to get member participation.
Because every time I wrote an article, he was on the phone with me going over the details of the article. He was very dedicated and thorough.
Oh, yeah.
What Dave Weinberg told me is that he's retired from everything.
Really?
Retired from all the magazines and the organizations, and he shut down his own business. He didn't say he was ill or anything like that. He just got tired of doing all that. So
he's had some good help, though. He had mentors with Mr. Moran, who's just joined us, and Mark Fishman was really helpful initially, I know, with helping him learn a really good editing style. And he became a really fine editor for sure. Because a lot of us, myself included, aren't really great writers. And he could make us sound like, any of the great writers, and technical writing is no fun, for sure.
He and I discussed not only the technical content of my articles, but the writing style.
Yes. Yeah, he, I guess, plans to spend most of his spare time now reading. What he's going to read, I'm not sure, but.
Leonardo da Vinci. He's going to study Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, I'm sure he's already read all the biographies of da Vinci.
He just picked up a new giant book.
Oh, okay.
Moving on.
You're on.
Sounds like
Nobody
it.
else has anything.
Okay, I guess I'm on. All right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you a little quick peek at the page that we're developing to send us to the recorded meetings. The first one has been up there. I haven't put it out yet because I just wanted to make sure everything worked. And then Ken and I put together a list of links so far. We got a couple of contributions. A couple came in from David and also Ray Zahora, I think his name is. He sent a couple in, and then Ken had a bunch of them, and I had a bunch of them, and we kind of were talking about the way to post it and do it, and we went back and forth. So it's pretty much settled right now. So what you'll see is that, and I'm just going to quickly go over the format of it. And I won't spend a lot of time on the links because hopefully they're descriptive enough. But once we quickly go over these, if somebody wants to talk about it, that's fine. And I assume hopefully somebody else has some other things. They did some links too. So I'm going to post where I want you to go right now. And I'll share my screen and bring that up so you can look at it with me and Ken, and then you could take a look at how that page comes out. So Ken, I haven't shared a screen before, so hopefully I'll figure it out. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, I've got an oddball shaped screen, so I don't know how it's
Yes,
showing up
here.
at your end. It's okay.
Can you blow it up a bit? I'm on a 13-inch laptop and I can't read.
Okay, so okay, is that any help?
Yeah, it's getting there.
Okay, let me go. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other page may look kind of funny because it's going to squish a lot of stuff in. So this is what developing that will be a directory to the meetings. So Nick, the one that Nick did last meeting, this link will bring you to our YouTube YouTube channel, and there's the link for the meeting, so you can watch the video.
And so I could get MOSFETs or
Yes.
FETs.
So I'll turn that down. And in that video, there will be links to, down here in the description, there will be links to the chat that went on. And there will also be an audio only. So people who just want to listen to audio while they're taking a shower or roaming around can do that. So as that gets developed, we'll put that out there and go over that. If there's any questions, let me know. So now from this page, this is the start of this meeting. So right now, this just links to, oops. Oh, sorry, open forum one. Okay, so this is the links page that Ken and I have come up with, along with the other couple of other contributions. So the format of this is starting off with YouTube, general interest. So you can have the link, and anything that is in normal text will be text that comes from the site itself. So somebody would narrate the site, that's that text. Anything in italics is from the person who submitted this link if they want to comment on it. So again, I'm not going to go over these, just want to give you a feel of what this page looks like. And because some of these might be boring to some people and some might like it, so you can go over it on your own. Okay, and then we have interviews from different people. And again, where this is in italicized, Ken Schwartz, that is his comment for this link. Then we've got people who want to, I picked some nostalgia things, stuff that I had many millions of years ago that I thought were interesting in the sense they were pretty mechanically interesting, plus how they integrated electronics in it a long time ago. Music theory and history. You can see some of the things here. Podcasts, this is kind of interesting, 20,000 hertz. Some of the stuff you hear every day and how it came about being, for instance, even the HBO logo. If you ever watched HBO at the beginning, there's a sound, how that came about and how they changed it. So it's kind of a technical description of how they made sounds or all different types of things. You can check it out. It's pretty good. Favorite recordings. Some of these links will just go to the recording that you could purchase on Amazon, and others maybe YouTube links or their own websites. So there'd be a combination of everything there. Recommended products and services. Some people said they found these items useful. And in this case, there's even software. So I there's a link here if you want to see a quick picture of what this is. There's the software for your phone. So you click on that link, and then the link here will bring you to the actual place to download the product. And cable tester. So you can see who submitted these links in case you want to direct any questions to them, and they can talk about them later on. Different websites. Again, it's a vintage website, Audioholics, AVS Forum. A lot of these you guys are already going to know. Monoprice. I thought Radio Locator was pretty interesting. This came out of MIT at one time, and you can search for radio stations all over the place. They've got a great locating service here, and there's technical information on the stations too, of how they broadcast, the effective radiated power, and various other things when you get to the station. So, and AudioGone, it's another website for audiophiles.
When I was very young, there was something called White's Radio Log that was published and updated periodically with all the radio stations in the country. Is this an equivalent online?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of these locations, a lot of these, there's even software for your phone. I've got one that goes all over the world. It's almost like a ham radio, but it's delivered on the internet. But they have to be broadcasting into the internet. Like most places, a lot of places are today, they broadcast into it, but you just have to find the link. So that's why these will help you find the links to various stations. For instance, if you go back to here, and I just happen to put my zip code in, this is what you get. So, and there is 7, yeah. So anyways, you can, I don't want to bore anybody, so I don't want to linger on these. So
no, this is fantastic.
And then here's, as someone contributes to the document, I'll put their name down here so you'll know what the initials stand for. And again, text in normal format is directly from the site itself. Some people want to include a comment, you know, along with the site, and that will be italicized from the contributor. And if you want to send any, please, 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 if you send suggestions, additions, corrections, or feedback, just click the link. And if your computer's set up properly, it will just direct it to me.
Does this radio locator identify stations by type, like classical or public broadcasting?
Let's take a look at it. I don't think it goes too deep into that. Well, format, yeah, college. So it does, yeah, yeah. I haven't used it for a while. I remember it was probably about a year ago. I used it a couple of times and I forgot about it. And I came across it in trying to develop this list. And I went, oh yeah, gee, I really like this. There's one for the cell phone. If this is something that interests you, I'll put the one that I found on cell phone that goes the world over. And that is pretty cool. It gives you a map and you can drag your finger across the map and drop it somewhere in the world. And it will pull up a list of stations depending on where you dropped your finger. That's one of them. And of course you can search like this. So if format search, so you can do that. State, all these different types of searches up here. So, so you can play with that. Basically, I'll let you guys play with this offline. It's a PDF file. I will put that up. Actually, you can download it. When you click on the link that I gave you, you'll be able to save it. So it is a PDF format, and the links are clickable, of course. So Ken, you want to talk about anything on the list that you?
Is this going out as a in a BAS newsletter or a blast for all the BAS members?
It can go out anyway, and I'd like this to be a living document. So I'd like to get a constant feed of contributions, and I will update it as they come in, and you will see when it was updated down here. I'll put the date in so you can look at it and see if there's anything new.
Well, I can put it in the meeting notice.
Yeah, yeah, and David, thank you for putting in the meeting notice for people to send in some links. So like I say, we did get some in there, and we'll just keep adding to it.
In the next meeting notice, put the PDF there.
Yeah, yeah, and you can, I mean, I don't think you want to publish it in the actual journal itself, but you certainly can, since it's a regular PDF, but people wouldn't be able to click on it. I would just mention it in the publication with the address for this to get to it, and they can play with it.
What about the issue of copyright? Because I know there are a number of articles and so forth, news bits, news items and so forth, they're not exactly in the public domain.
Well,
I don't know how that would work in terms of linkages, because I know a lot of the stuff that was in the BAS speaker was reprinted by permission from the author or the copyright holder.
Well, if there are links to something online, it's public enough.
Right, exactly. So we're not printing anything here that they're not stealing anything and putting it in. So we're linking to them.
Okay, that makes sense.
And yeah, so everything there, even these music, let's see, there's some music links and they play it, but these music links are on the net. So we're good. What else did I want to mention if I thought of anything?
Well, John, why don't you talk about some of the links you provided that you think are interesting to review?
Oh gosh, I mean, what's interesting?
He's trying to start the meeting.
This is the meeting, right? But I want everybody else to contribute because I know everybody else came with a bunch of links too. So my point is, I mean, you know what? I don't know how many people this kind of interested me. Let's see, 4K UHD demos. I don't know how many of you guys have 4K UHD sets out there. I thought everybody did at one time, but I'm finding out they don't. But there's some great material here, and there's some description. This happens to be 8K, but there's a link to it. So if you have the app built into your TV, if you have the YouTube app built into your TV, you can go right to these videos to show off the TV and see the quality of it. And I wanted to mention, which it's in the text, that if you click on here, you can make sure what format you're getting. So this is a 4K 2160p, and then it goes up to 8K. So you can see, you can watch any resolution. So you want to make sure you're on your right resolution.
Does Roku provides access for non-smart TVs to YouTube?
Right.
Does Roku pass through the 4K signal from YouTube?
It depends on the Roku. So the high end, the top end one, which is only $100, and I recommend it. It's a standalone, so you need an HDMI cable going from the Roku box into your HDMI on the TV, but it passes through. For me, I need Dolby Digital. I won't buy a device that doesn't do, Dolby HDR, Dolby Vision, and Atmos. So that will pass it through, and you have to make sure some of the sticks that plug directly into the HDMI ports do not pass through some of the certain codecs, like the Dolby Vision.
Can you identify visually 4K versus 2K?
Oh, well, again, yes, absolutely. But 4K by itself, in my opinion, doesn't mean anything. It's the wider color gamut. So it's nice to have millions of shades of red rather than 256 shades of red. And that prevents a banding issue. And the high dynamic range. So blacks aren't crushed and whites aren't blown out. So that's the benefit, in my opinion, more so than 4K. Now, I don't know why a few years ago, they were talking about putting HDR and better color definition on 1080p, And that would make 1080p look a lot better. There's no reason why UHD, or I should say high dynamic range, can't be put on 1080p, but I haven't seen any of that around yet.
I don't think you will. I think it's a marketing issue that
you're
TV
right.
manufacturers want you to dump your HD and buy a 4K.
Right. So this is just the playlist I put together for my own use, and I thought I'd make the playlist public so you can just go and look at it and play with it on either your TV that has the streaming app built in. And TVs vary quite a bit. Some of the TVs don't do a good job of giving you Dolby Vision and passing through HDR10 plus.
Well, a lot of the TVs also have reduction systems. I have a 4K monitor TV that I'm looking at right now, and it will handle 4K, but only at 30 frames a second. But the YouTube functionality itself on occasion will do things to the audio and the video, depending upon how it's loaded and what the bandwidth is and so forth. And I know that a lot of TVs will up convert or down convert as well to take signals coming in that may not be native for the resolution of the TV, and they will scale it. This TV, which is a Seiki TV, will scale things up to 4K, and sometimes you see stuff, sometimes you don't when I watch it as a television.
Yeah, every 4K TV will upscale anything you handle. You can put a 480i signal into it and it will upscale it. And it depends on the quality of the scaler in the TV.
And the other variable is how the TV handles the internet streaming features if it's a so-called smart TV. There's different operating systems like Google and Samsung and Vizio, and there's no consistency across the gamut.
Right. So I wanted you guys, because I know we would love this. If you click on the video, right click, you'll get a stats for nerds, and you'll see the data. Let's play this. Let me turn the volume down.
Oh yeah, this is 380 by 2160 at 30 frames a second.
Right. So
just really a problem unless you're watching high-speed sports.
Yeah, and the TV makes a big difference. I mean, I'm fortunate enough, and I love it to death. It's got an LG OLED set, and their apps are tremendous. They have all the major apps in there, the streaming. Disney Plus is phenomenal with their quality of their production and the video and the audio. They're using the spatial audio on some of them. It sounds tremendous. It sounds really good, you know, when you put it through your stereo. And it handles everything you could throw at it, pretty much, any format out there. I've never seen it glitch.
What are they doing? Pouring chocolate syrup on the ice cubes?
Yeah.
I would differ, John Allen here, I would differ about the need for 60 versus 30 frames per second. And in fact, the lower the quality of the video, the more I notice it. I have lots of NTSC video, and I also have, believe it or not, from the Moscow State University in Russia, there is a very good deinterlacer that will create 60 frame per second deinterlaced progressive video from a interlaced 30 frame per second video. And the difference in quality in video that I shoot, and I admit a lot of it is moving with a moving camera on my bicycle, but some of it isn't. The difference is astonishing. I linked to examples of that in the article that was published in the last issue of The Speaker about degradation of video. And I'm finding, as that article said, that there is just, it's really appalling the quality that is being lost in historic video footage when it could be restored to the degree that I'm able to restore my own videos.
John, have you seen YouTube videos that take silent films that typically a shot in cities areas like driving through San Francisco and New York. They've reconverted it, deinterlaced it, and adjusted the frame rate, and the resulting quality is pretty spectacular.
Yes, well, actually, this most of this is older stuff that's from film, and so it will be shot at 24 frames per second, or in the oldest silent film, at frame rates that can only be discerned accurately by watching how fast people walk. And this is not deinterlacing, rather it is motion interpolation, where you'll take something that's shot at say 16 frames per second and bring it up to 60 frames per second. And so the motion is very smooth. Often the quality of the old video is spectacular. I mean, as the old film is spectacular.
Meaning
as well.
they had good resolution in the frames, but the control from frame to frame was the problem. I suspect if you notice the very old cameras were all mechanically wound.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And they probably didn't have perfect speed regulators.
No, as they say in French, tourner un film. They still say that. To turn a film, you're turning the crank. And the crank would be turned at different speeds for effect.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So rather than post-production that we're used to put in special effects, they had the camera person do it.
Well, you know, if you want Buster Keaton to be racing down the street chased by the Keystone Cops, then you run the camera more slowly.
So, John, apropos to that, I know when you shoot, you want to have shutter speeds that are somewhat longer than the frame rate in order to have a degree of blur and continuity from one frame to the next and not get a choppy result. And I imagine that similar practices were followed for filmmaking back in the day.
Well,
so how do they deal with that blur?
Well, you close down the iris on the camera, and then you'd have to open up the shutter. Now, with video these days, you could do the same thing with sophisticated cameras. With the action cameras I use, you don't have a choice. It doesn't, the tiny fisheye lens does not have an iris. And so in bright sunlight, the images are indeed very sharp and choppy. It doesn't bother me too much in the widescreen images that I shoot, but 60 frames per second does work better for that because the blur is what it is, or lack of blur becomes less noticeable.
My question is more about the restoration of historic film, which presumably has that blur because its only way to get a natural result is to have the shutter synchronized with the frame rate so that there's some sense of motion continuity or will look choppy. So if that means that individual frames are going to have some blur in them, how do they get rid of that in order to interpolate?
Well, actually, that's not so, because motion interpolation can interpolate to a frame rate that is not an integer multiple of the original frame rate. A good example I have, and it's online, is that Adam 12, the cop series on TV, was shot at 24 frames per second on film, which is broadcast in NTSC as 2323 at 60 fields per second. Well, I needed to use an excerpt from that in a documentary video I produced, a video of someone giving a presentation where he ran the video on screen, but I shot it at 30 frames per second. And if you try to convert 24 to 30 frames per second just by using individual frames, it gets very bad. This what did I put it through? I put it through the first deinterlacer, so I had 60 frames per second deinterlaced, and each of them looked good. And then I well, 24, no, I had 24 frames. I put it through a processor to get 24 film frames per second. It was leaving out every fifth video field. So then I had 24, and to get it from 24 to 30, I used the Gooder video um, Motion Perfect, it's called, which changes frame rates. And I got 30 frame per second video out of that looked just fine, except for a couple minor glitches. There's one place where the siren on top of the police car wobbles. But otherwise, you would never know that it wasn't
Great.
shot at 30.
Great tip.
Just one other thing. Some of these up here, these sites, this site is, it's a guy who mainly specializes in computer technical stuff. He's really good. He's been all over the place with everything computer, but he does go into video and audio stuff, whatever. He tries out a lot of stuff. Literally, I mean, he makes millions of dollars a year on his site. He's got so many followers. And there isn't too much strictly on audio video, but I do follow him for, my other interests. But he had a couple of funny, he's very entertaining to watch.
You're speaking of Techmoan?
Yeah.
Right. I'm a fan of
his. Did you say millions in income from a technical audio site?
Oh, no. Well, no, he does more than that. He does a lot of stuff. He's a character. Let's see.
He's very British.
No, this is a different guy.
Oh, it is. Oh, no, that is a different guy.
We run up against the same problem. Every time I talk, you can hear an echo. Okay, it's not quite an echo. What it actually is reverb, and it's caused.
He sounds like an ideal BAS member.
Yeah, he's funny. This is he's building. Let's see. He's building a studio. He's building a home.
Look at that, 2,359,000 views. That's enormous.
It is, and he's very entertaining. I love when he's handling an expensive piece of equipment and he drops stuff all over the place. He's got a great production team with him. It's, again, check a few of them out, see where it leads you if you're interested. But he's entertaining to watch, and it's some good background technical information. It doesn't go very, very deep, although he went in with some scopes on this, and he's talking about the sound deadening panels.
Is his name Linus, like Linus?
Linus,
Torvald?
yeah, Linus Tech Tips. No, it's not the same guy. It's not the Linux guy. Yeah, he's let's see if we can move along to. So he's really into it. All this different stuff. He puts doing TVs in his house and the whole house sound system. Going over the.
Why become a teacher or a professor when you can do this and make millions?
Let me tell you, Intel sponsors him. He was giving away $5,000 computer systems to his workers and everything. One time he went in, he met somebody out in the street that was going to go into, I don't know, not Micro Center. He used to work with Micro Center. He's from Canada, now a Canadian place. And as he's talking to this guy, he says, yeah, let's put a system together for you. So they walked through I'll say Micro Center, but it wasn't for this one. And the guy knew a little bit about computers that went in there to buy something. And Linus said, oh yeah, I'll help you out. You really need this, you need that. And what do you want to do with this? So they went around the store and patched together the pieces to build the system. It came out to about $7,000, and he wrote the check for the thing to the guy. The guy just got a free system because he walked in.
A $7,000 system. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the video cards say you can spend $2,800 on a video card without too much sweat, breaking too much of a sweat.
Yeah, well, they hopefully are going to be reducing that now that the Bitcoin market has fallen apart.
Yeah, I've seen them.
By the way, there's a lot of GPUs, graphical processing units, coming on the market used, and most of them have been beat to death. So if you see what looks like an incredible deal on a high-speed computer, a GPU, be wary, because it could be one that was used in one of these servers for Bitcoin mining. And if that's the case, it's been run round the clock, 24 hours a day for 2-3 years.
Well, are you implying that it's degraded from overheating?
Yes.
That too.
I used to overclock my video cards years ago, and I burnt out a couple, and they don't just stop working. You just get these weird effects on your screen, like you're on drugs.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you say,
also
what
the
is
memory,
this?
some of the memory storage on some of them apparently is completely burned out.
Yeah.
But you're saying you weren't on drugs, though.
No, I wasn't on drugs.
Okay.
I'd like to point out, since BAS is into music, there's some interesting music YouTubers.
Yeah.
I've taken up the electric bass again after 50 years and stumbled across this guy named Charles Berthoud, Berthoud, who is an amazing virtuoso electric bass player. I mean, he'll play whole compositions, bass, accompaniment, and melody all at the same time on a 4-string and electric bass at breakneck speeds, and he's got a real sense of humor. There's also a site called Wings of Pegasus that does analysis of vocal recordings, and that's quite interesting. He's looking at historic vocal recordings and how did the singers sing? How did they go from note to note? How accurate was their pitch? Also a British guy and very humorous.
Have you, I just stumbled across some YouTubes of a guy whose passion in life is analyzing the vocal tracks on a whole variety of recordings. And he's done a piece on auto-tuning.
Yeah, that's Wings of Pegasus.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, it's this young bearded guy with
he's the one that analyzed Cher
right.
doing her song that seems full of phase distortion. And he said that's deliberate auto-tuning because she never hit a note right, and it was cheaper to auto-tune than keep her in the studio.
Yes, and some appalling things that are happening, like the band Queen, in its original recordings, that Freddie Mercury is renowned for his pitch accuracy, but then they go and auto-tune it, and when it's auto-tuned, everything ends up just like this dead, equal-tempered intonation, which is not what you want to do in good singing.
It's sort of like the degradation of compression and the pitch.
Oh, but I mean, it's worse.
Yeah,
well, it's like piano tuning. I mean, the piano tuning cannot be done with a tuning instrument except for the center portions of the piano, because the extremes actually spread out beyond the quote calibrated portion of the, if you were trying to do an octave by exactly, an 8-note pitch, as you get towards the extremes on the piano, you don't hear it correctly.
Yeah, well, that vibrating strings are inherently inharmonic. The upper harmonics go sharp because there's bending stiffness as well as tension stiffness to the strings.
Yeah.
You want to move on? I want to make sure everybody gets in whatever they have also. So my suggestion is, Ken, go over some of your stuff you want to show, and whoever else has things they want to show.
Yeah, why don't I share my screen?
Okay, let me get out of that.
Okay. So we don't need these. Can you see my shared screen now?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So let me scroll down.
Can you go to full screen? It'll make it a little bit bigger.
Does that work better for you?
No, I mean, just close the side panel, the left side.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, that's much better, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, so I found a lot of very interesting interviews in YouTube and also podcasts, and I wanted to highlight those to make sure people were aware they're around. I'm a big fan of Floyd Toole. I've been reading his articles for years, but I was not aware that he had presented in 1995 effectively a synopsis of his, his tome on sound reproduction. So, if you've read that book, and you probably have, you'll enjoy this because it goes through the topics and talks about them, from the experience of having conducted all those experiments. And then if you haven't read it, then you can get a more entertaining introduction by watching this video. So I definitely recommend that. And then as a follow-up, there's this guy, Aaron Hardison, who has his own YouTube channel. He's an audio reviewer, and he's an enthusiast. He's not a trained engineer, so he's very self-effacing about his technical knowledge. But he somehow manages to bring in these incredible guests like Floyd Toole to talk about their careers and just chat for an hour and a half on a whole range of topics. And yeah, what a treat. So Aaron's Audio Corner, there's Floyd Toole, and then Greg Timbers, who recently left JBL. I think he was asked to leave after 43 years and so many amazing products. He seems at peace with that departure, but he's still going crazy making new speakers at his house, and he shows you his listening room and the modifications that he's been making. So that's really fun to listen to Greg Timbers and talk about his background and how that went at JBL over those years. So along with that, I have here on the podcast Andrew Jones also available. So he's still working, but he's had a very long career, including I think some 16 years at Pioneer. So that was a very interesting move from these leading European or American manufacturers to work for a Japanese manufacturer at a time when Japanese hi-fi companies were not well regarded for speakers. But he definitely made big contributions there. And then there's Nelson Pass, whose interview is so long it's broken into two parts. And he's got a lot to talk about, and an incredibly disarming fellow. I mean, really very charming, very interesting points of view on a whole range of topics. So boy, you could spend hours listening to all these things, and I'm sure there are more, but these were some that I thought were especially good. If I scroll back up, this music theory and history sounds very academic, and I suppose it is, but this particular channel, Early Music Sources, has a lot of very in-depth videos that probably only musicologists would be interested in. But the treatment of temperaments, which I always thought was kind of a puzzle, is explained extremely well. And also he has a video talking about historic recordings and specifically the interpretation of music by people who knew the composer or were at least once removed. So their teacher knew the composer, and so they had some direct insight into composer's intent, and comparing those interpretations with more modern interpretations, and discussion around things that have changed in terms of musical style. It's just a wonderful resource. So this is fantastic. And Adam Neely is, I guess, similar to this Wings of Pegasus in the sense that he's an accomplished musician and also deeply knowledgeable musicologist who gets into the details of music from a musician's perspective. So he'll dissect a piece of music and talk about how all the chord progressions work and explain in a way that I find accessible, even though I don't have this kind of musical training. I really appreciate kind of being invited into that world. It's not directed at audio people, it's directed at musicians. And then the last one here in this section, the Frederick Historic Piano Collection. I'm curious, does anybody in the group know about this?
Yeah, sure, I do.
Yeah, we had a BAS meeting there.
You did? Well, very good. So that's
written up too, I believe. It's
really an amazing resource in our area. It's a world-class collection of historic pianos, which are in playable condition. In fact, you make an appointment to go there, And that's the whole point, is to bring sheet music so that way you can play music on the instruments that the composers used to play, to hear what it sounds like.
That's pretty cool.
It's just astonishing. It turns out that all kinds of problems that people have railed about in terms of musical interpretation turn out to be just related to the instruments. So for example, there's a Schumann piece, which the hosts, when you get the tour, the Fredericks, they play this for you on a modern piano, and it sounds very muddy when played at the marked tempo. But when played on a Streicher, which was, you know, contemporaneous to the composer and probably the instrument that he used to compose it, when you hear it on that piano, it's fine. The musical intent comes through just no problem at all. So all of this hand wringing that people go through to try to figure out what the composer was thinking when he made these markings, turns out just to be a technical issue. So it's essential to hear this music on these older instruments. And I don't know any other place that makes them available like this. Just amazing.
Somewhat related to that, I came across some videos about some models of Bosendorfer pianos that have extra notes in the low end, so that certain Bach pieces could be played to replicate the lowest organ notes.
That's interesting. Well, I know that those notes are covered up in order to prevent confusing pianists when they're not being used for any particular playing objective.
Well, they use all black keys for the lowest, the added half dozen or so.
Oh, okay. Is that right? They're just colored black, so you don't get thrown off. Yeah, interesting. So let's see. Moving on to recordings. I think the thing that I would want to share about these, you can read the notes, but the thing I would share is that I discovered these effectively by surfing Quobuzz and Rune. So these are, Quobuzz is a streaming service that has high quality, masterings of, millions of albums and all kinds of things, jazz and classical, as well as popular and historic recordings and new recordings. It just seems absolutely endless. And the quality is fantastic. I suppose somebody's going to tell you that you can't hear the difference, but on my system, I can hear the difference. It's better than the CD. It is. It's fantastic. So whenever I am listening through my Rune player, it'll, of course, pick the one that's local to the Rune system first. And I always check to see whether Quobuzz has a copy, because it's going to be better. Anyway, the other thing that's terrific about this is that they tell you who all the, the conductors and the instrumentalists are, but they also give you the behind the scenes picture of who the producer was and the recording engineer. And so if you find something that you think is a really good recording, you can find all the other recordings by the same guy. And usually they're really good. If you find a good one, you'll find more. And I found that searching by producer is particularly effective because it crosses different orchestras. You find different recording engineers. But if a producer,
just a second,
excellent, you find lots. Go ahead.
I need to turn off I'm sorry. I should have muted. My son inquired something.
Oh, okay. No harm done. So, for example, the Monteverdi and the Purcell and those two were both Nicholas Bartolome, whom I had never heard of, but shame on me. He in fact produced a couple records that were in my collection already, and seems to do quite a bit in early music, but very imaginative work and brilliant performances. So wow, what a treat. So those are I think the most important highlights. Last thing I would mention, if somebody doesn't know about this is a good find. I've not used it in recent years, but in the past, not so long ago, I have bought and sold things. And generally my experience is that you can get your money back. So you buy some amplifier that you've always wished you had from years ago, and you can scratch that itch and then sell it and lose no money at all. So so a fun way to try things out at very low risk. Audio done.
Yeah.
So that's it for me. I went on at length. Anybody have a question about the things I shared here, or we could move on to other contributors?
Yeah, David Hadaway had something on there if he wants to comment on it.
Well, just listen to the music. I just wrote a one sentence comment about it. That's about it. The Massenet Piano Concerto. And the thing about learning how to be a conductor. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I actually know this guy.
Ken Schwartz gave me that link, actually.
Where's the link on that one?
Oh, you just passed it. Go down some more. It's the top.
Oh, here it is.
Oh,
yeah. So this guy Ed Ting is something of an internet personality in the astro world. So you know, stargazers will spend a lot of money on telescopes of various types, and it's not uncommon for people to end up with a half dozen or more of these things if they get into it. It's kind of like parallel world to the stereo people. Well, anyway, he's got a YouTube channel that gets into a lot of these things, but then surprise, surprise, he took a introductory conducting course at Dartmouth where he was getting a master's recently. And yeah, it was a real ordeal because the instructor was very serious and very tough, but Ed took it in stride, and it looks like he learned a lot and did a good job. And best of all, he's brilliant at sharing that experience in this video. So if you've ever been curious about how conducting works, here's a terrific perspective.
It's something like going to boot camp where they beat you down at the beginning and then finally you reach success at the end.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm curious, anybody here, have you met Floyd Toole or Greg Timbers or Nelson Pass?
I've met on multiple occasions Floyd Toole, and he was, trying to remember, was he a BAS speaker at one time?
Yes.
Yeah.
More than once, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's given AES talks. I've gotten to know him over the years since the 80s almost, and had him for dinner once, a long evening, listening to Allison speakers. And I wrote the only long review of his book, One Rev Ago. And the latest Rev has some changes in it at my suggestion and argument. He's a wonderful guy, even to argue with, and extremely fair-minded and evidence-based, although with strong biases. Maybe strong is too strong a way to put it, but with clear preferences and some gaps, arguably, but a great, a good thinker and a good writer and a fine person to mix it up with. I think he's dialing down on Audio Karma and some of the other sites where he has appeared as recently as a year ago at some length. I think he's dialing it down a bit, as we all are.
Speaking of dialing it down, I happened to be fortunate enough to go through a concert last weekend. And one of the guest speakers who had worked with the conductor for many years was Ron Della Chiesa. And I've recorded him a couple of times hosting things with the Boston Civic or the Wellesley Symphony. And then I discovered, after I did a little digging later, he is 84 years old. And
wow.
He is still doing stuff with Symphony Hall broadcasts. He's still in the broadcast booth.
Yes.
every Saturday that the concert is being broadcast, I presume. It certainly sounds like he's there and he's not doing it remotely. But it was.
Yeah, I believe he's still active, but I certainly didn't know he was 84.
Yeah, he was born in 1938.
Wow.
There's a
Alrighty then.
God bless Wikipedia. There's a whole article on there about him.
Oh, good, good. My tool review is, I think, was reprinted in the BASS. I'm sure it was actually, but it also appeared in Linear Audio, which is one of the defunct resources that we've all referred to. A lot of them are defunct because audio is aging out as well.
Well, I was impressed by how many people are interested in this music reviewer and his interviews. I think it's Aaron Hardison. So he's quite active and very much keeping alive the the things that are of interest to this group. So he might be a good person for us to connect with for a future meeting.
Cool.
So John, you had John Allen, you had talked about a couple resources. Can you share links to those in the chat window?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I walked away. My son's cooking dinner here. I needed to check in with him. If you could remind me, I don't remember just what they were. Some of them were ones that other people knew. But
one was
this
a
is why I
bass.
wanted to have the chat.
The bass player, yeah, the bass player and
Wings.
Some cool video.
Wings.
Wings of Pegasus.
Pegasus. Okay, I'll put this in the chat. And then there were a couple of technical things. Moscow State. You don't want to. I don't know if you want to get anything from Russia anymore, but it's a great piece of software. Anyway.
I was disappointed that one of my recommended recordings is conducted by a Russian who refuses to denounce Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So he lost his job in Germany as a result. And I don't know what's at stake for him if he were to speak out, but he didn't.
Well, as people have found, some people who speak out against President Putin or Lord Putin,
yeah,
they suddenly vanish and nobody's too sure what's going on.
So there could be threats to his family. I mean, it's easy to be a critic here, but I'm sure it's very painful for all of us.
Speaking of Putin, I saw a news brief of I guess it was yesterday or the day before. 2 retirees from MI6, which is the Secret Service, basically, or the CIA in Britain. They both feel that Putin, and in fact, it was corroborated by the head of Ukrainian security, who has spies all over the place, I guess, up in the Kremlin, that Putin is extremely ill, and that they expect he will be quietly ushered off within 2023 to a sanitarium. Now, what that will do with other things that are going on at the moment, I don't know, but I suspect that may be the way things go. The rumor was, somebody else had mentioned a rumor that he's suffering from leukemia, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, there have been rumors of him suffering from some cancer for a few months.
Very ill, apparently.
Not ill enough.
No,
yeah, exactly.
No, unfortunately.
Could also be a state-induced illness.
So
they know when it's going to happen,
right? Yeah, I guess he's been bringing that on people who have been objecting or complaining about things. Anyway,
I heard on the news, seems a little fantastical, that when he travels, his Secret Service collects his bowel movements.
Oh yeah, it was on Wait, Don't Tell Me. That's definite.
Yeah, so that nobody else can analyze them.
Yeah.
Cute.
That's a good job for you.
God. The question is, how does he do a BM? He doesn't obviously use the toilet if they want to collect them.
Oh, you can go in your hat.
Yeah, well, I guess that's probably what he does.
This kind of work sounds like someone who should be involved in the BASS, I
think. Either that or work out in the Deer Island group in Boston. They're actually analyzing sewage these days because they're finding it's a precursor for COVID breakouts.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we
wastewater is full of info.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anybody else?
How do we get?
We're talking.
Go ahead, Alvin. Sorry.
Since we're talking generally, I just want to mention I got an email that Ralph Glasgow is moving and downsizing and selling a lot of his equipment. And as we all remember, the BAS visited his home. If you remember, in New Jersey, it's gorgeous. And he had probably 8 pairs of electrostatics.
Oh, jeez.
Of course, the best ones they make. And I understand all of those are for sale also. So if you're into audio equipment, and particularly electrostatic speakers, look him up.
Holy moly.
How shocking. Yeah, I can still remember back in the day listening to black discs of the ring cycle that London did, and I had a pair of one set of KLH9 electrostatics at the time, and you could hear the tape splices in the electrostatic where they were, reassembling tapes. You could actually detect and hear them, but I've never been able to hear any of them on any other recordings that I listened to. But there were points in the production, of course, because the operas are all very long, where they would do portions and then splice it together. And every now and then there were little glitches, then you could actually hear the tape splicing going on. So electrostatics have their day, but they don't have a lot of bottom end, and they tend to be bipolar. But yeah.
But
how do we get a copy of this thing? I still haven't figured that out, John.
Copy of what?
This thing that's being presented here, this combined favorites of the BAS. It isn't on any of the emails that I've seen. So do we have to go to the site that you
No, did you click on the link I put up there at the beginning?
Probably not.
Okay, so look down, I don't know, 5 or 6 messages, and you'll see, and right now it's hosted on my site, and we'll do something later on about moving it or whatever to a better link, but you'll see www.hajinlian.net/BAS.
This is in the chat line. Oh, I see. No, that's Public Radio Fan.
Is it in the meeting announcement?
No.
No, this was developed after the meeting announcement. So Ken and I put this together afterwards after that announcement.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Well, here it is. I'll put it
line.
there. I'll put it here. I'll just type it in there. Hold on.
I can send it.
Well, that's why it would be helpful to blast.
Oh, yeah, you could do that too. Yeah.
BAS membership.
Yeah. But this link there, that I don't know why it's not. Oh, that's why, because it doesn't have the HTTP. But the last one I put there, that'll lead to where the videos are going to be put also on the BAS YouTube channel.
So that's www.hajin.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Sorry about that. And what is it? Hajinlian?
Yeah. Hey, you said it. 10 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
.net?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And right above that is a link to the document itself.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So yes.
So that first link will bring you to, again, the page that will have the meetings, all the meetings posted on video and the links from the meetings, like the chats and stuff like that. So Ken's making them available afterwards to me to download, and I post them up on YouTube. So.
That is cool.
If you search YouTube for Boston Audio Society, you'll come up with the channel also. So let's see. But we don't have much traffic there, so it hasn't bubbled up to the top yet. Yeah.
Well, we should do something about that.
Right.
Remember to like and subscribe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. But it's funny. I went there and I found something when I did search Boston Audio Society. There was something from 6 years ago, and Alvin and Nick, you're in there. Oh no, just Alvin. It looks like it's the CES 2016 live stream by enjoythemusic.com.
That happened, certainly, for sure.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. Looks
Well,
like
it's a reprint by Fremer, right?
I'm sorry?
It's a reprint by Michael Fremer. That's his site. We
Oh, it
have
is.
lots of reprints, not lots, sorry. We have a few reprints of articles and video type things online. The occasional BASS piece and so on.
Okay. That's right. You mentioned that. I got to check that out. Yeah. Yeah, if you did the search for Boston Audio Society on YouTube, the channel should have come up. You'll recognize the logo. And if you hit the subscribe button on it, then you'll get notices when something's posted.
And this meeting comes up. No, sorry, it's the May meeting. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, John, I think at this point we were going to open it up and ask for contributions by chat window if anybody else had some favorite resources they wanted to share, and we could add that to the document.
Yeah, I've been capturing that people have been sending, and I've been capturing those, and I'll update our file with these links. And don't forget, please, suggestions too. If you go to the bottom of that page, you'll see you can submit changes, additions, feedback. If you don't like something, the way it's formatted, or something is incorrect, or you want to add something, please send it along.
This is really neat. I'm curious, how much work did it take to put this together?
2 minutes.
I thought it would be easy, but it turns out that my library of links, most of them are dead. And it occurred to me that I was more active in researching these things years ago, and I've kind of stopped paying as much attention. So I had to look around for some good stuff for the meeting. But it was its own pleasure, so it didn't bother me. But the interviews are long. The answer to that is on many of these sites you can speed them up, and play them back at 1.5x or even 2x if people talk slowly.
What?
So yeah, that helped.
Yeah, and on my links, I went to them and I grabbed, I found some of those videos and I captured the text that they, from the site to put in there as a description. And then some of the art, I had to go to the sites and grab the art from them, the logos, and resize them properly. I started this out before I thought with a Word document, and Word converts to HTML because I thought I'd make it a native HTML document so somebody can get to it anywhere on the web rather than have to download a PDF or look at it as a PDF because the web will reformat. And I found out Word is not very good when it converts to HTML. It's kind of a mess. So then I started using a different HTML editor and did it all over again. And then we had some issues talking to Ken about some ideas, and Ken says, well, let's do it in Word. And he knew what I didn't know is that you can actually save as in Word HTML, or save as PDF, and the links carry through.
Yeah.
So it was, I was printing to a PDF. For years, I printed to a PDF because I never needed the links to be active. And the links are not active when you print to a PDF. But if you save as, Word does put out a PDF that you can click on these links.
Except when it doesn't. It turns out there's a bug in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
There's a bug in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
This one prevents some of the links come through and some of the links are not clickable. And it's a known problem. There are plenty of people complaining about it. And the workaround is to use Google Docs to import the Word file and then export it again. And it works.
So it's kind of a kludge. It's multi-stepped right now.
Are you guys using Microsoft 365 or are you just, it's a personal version?
Word.
Well, I use 365. I never thought about Ken. What do you use? I assume you do.
I was using on my computer. But anyway, the technical details aren't very interesting.
Yeah.
But when you have a PDF, it's nice because you can read it offline.
Yeah.
And and you can also understand its version, so you can save it with a date, and then if you go back and you see there's been some changes, you've got the old version too, which is nice.
This is Ken Wax. Many years ago, I had a discussion with a manager for Microsoft, and I questioned how come there were so many obvious bugs in Microsoft products. I told him I used to run a software department, and it takes some effort, but you can have a rigorous review and clean up bugs. His response was, we think our customers value features more than worry about bugs.
Oh boy. Wow. That explains a great deal about Microsoft.
I don't know the state of play, but Word 2010, which I've been using for, I don't know, since 2009, I guess, is stable in all of its link functions and is superior in PDF creation to any standalone PDF creator. It's really remarkable. In fact, the graphics handling in 2010 to Word to PDF is oddly superior, sharper, 8K-like, and so on. But I've never had a links problem in 2010 either.
Yeah.
This is on a PC. So I don't know the state of play now, but.
Yeah. It's has to do with having a mix of fonts, and that will be the beginning of your troubles. But even if you change the fonts to be consistent, the problem remains. Anyway, pretty obscure, pretty easy to work around, but a pain.
Wow.
Okay.
And I guess the final remark I make is that these streaming services are spectacularly wonderful for learning about music in the sense of this navigation for not just the obvious, the piece of music or the conductor, although that's alone very interesting to compare different versions, but for discovering music that you've never heard of, composers that are more obscure, orchestras that don't get a lot of attention, but are fabulous work. The searching by producer turned out to be a big find. So
I understand.
The most valuable discovery of all this effort.
Yeah, I understand, and I don't know whether it's available online, but there are recording production files available in some of the, I guess it's in the New York City Library, that actually go into detail on how various recordings were made by Columbia and so forth back in the day. And you can actually pull them out or get a copy of the thing or actually see the documentation as to where the mic placements were, what the settings were in the mixing consoles and so forth, and how they actually set up and recorded some of the more unusual performances.
I found the YouTube videos, Ken Wax, of a rock and roll recording where they showed 25 different takes of a 3-minute, a very popular rock piece that was done in studio, and each time they got a little better.
Wow.
What got better?
Well, they were recording the singer separately from the instruments, and they were actually focusing on getting the instrument improvement.
That's like
this was Phil Spector's recording of his future wife's production of "Be My Baby."
Oh, that's a famous
great song, yeah.
Famous moment in history.
Yeah, and the drum set was probably the most outstanding feature of that piece.
Now that's 55, 60 years ago, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, around 1960.
Sounds like what Charlie Chaplin used to do with his movies. He would shoot film and shoot film and shoot the same scene dozens of times till he got it the way he wanted it. When this was back in the days of silent movies. And, they would literally litter the editing room floor with the takeouts that they didn't like, but he would shoot the same scene multiple times, just trying to get the timing and everything right.
And he could use video flanging, like Alan explained.
Yeah.
One of the problems that he had was film wasn't reliably rated. So they would get the film, the raw film or the cameras, and they would have to take some test shots and then do some developing to figure out what the appropriate developing was, and then
what the settings were.
Yeah, then they'd be able to expose it properly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it wasn't just exposure. It was also some of the more complicated scenes of getting the actual action and the scenes right. Sure. It's like watching some of the old Buster Keaton silence. I mean, the thing that's amazing about most of them is he was doing all his own stunt work. And, you think nothing of the one where he's walking in front of the building and the whole face of the building comes down and he's standing in what was the building's open doorway. Well, if he had been a couple of feet one way or the other, he'd have been killed.
Yeah.
And the same thing with, there's a scene where he's walking somewhere and he literally drops down through a manhole. You don't time or do that just right, you can literally break your neck or worse. And in fact, there's a scene out of The General, which is probably the most famous movie he did, where he gets under a water tower for some reason and pulls the lever on the water tower and the water comes crashing down and he goes down on the ground. And he was kind of knocked a little silly, so they stopped filming for the day. Next day, he was back filming more. But a couple of months later, he was in for, I guess, a general physical or something. And they ran x-rays on his head or his neck or his body or something. And the doc says, "When did you break your neck?" Because his neck had actually experienced a fracture when that water tower bash hit him on the head. Wow. And yet he continued to do a lot of stuff that was just unbelievably sophisticated. It's like watching, who was the guy in the Pink Panther?
Peter Sellers?
Huh?
Peter Sellers?
Sellers, yeah. you watch some of his timing and how he does some of the scenes, and it's like, man, this guy was just an incredible artist, because the timing is just spot on for the gags and the stunts and everything else.
Just as a point of info, if you're into rock and roll, that studio session I saw with the recording of Phil Spector's Be My Baby, they featured Hal Blaine on the drums. If you don't know Hal Blaine, he's from Massachusetts. He passed away recently at 90. He was the session drummer in 35,000 recordings, 35,000 sessions, 6,000 singles, and in most of the award-winning rock songs.
Wow.
Oh.
Hey, could you share a link to that?
Just look up Hal Blaine on Wikipedia, Blaine. Okay.
Wow.
Everyone's seen the Wrecking Crew movie, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you haven't, you should. He's one of many, and it's actually not as good as it should have been. It should have had even more of the session drummers and the session bass players and so on. But it's good if you don't know it.
He created his own drum sets with, he's the one who introduced like 10 tom-toms of different pitches in front of him.
Yep. No, he was something, but the Wrecking Crew is a good thing to know.
Yeah, there was a special clip sequence on CBS Sunday Morning today. My wife likes to watch it, on the band Toto. And I'm not into rock and I'm not into pop music, and I had never heard any of the songs they're famous for, but it was basically a group of guys that became studio musicians, and in the process joined up as a band, and they initially came out with something, I forget what it was, but they were considered one-hit wonders for a bit until they actually started producing. And I guess the one that everybody remembers, because that's what they were talking about, is a song called Africa.
Oh yeah, right. That's very. Wasn't that used in a movie?
Probably they did a whole bunch of stuff but you get these studio musicians, and they're like journey musicians. They're incredibly talented, incredibly capable, and in many cases you never have a clue who the hell they are.
James Howard Newton is the leader of Toto, and he's done quite a few soundtracks for movies. So yeah, well known.
Yeah, they also wrote most of their own songs, and apparently they were talking to some of the guys, and they're becoming senior citizens like a lot of rockers are. But it was an interesting clip sequence in the CBS Sunday.
We should try to get speakers who know about the composers of television theme songs. Some of them are extraordinarily creative.
Or even just theme music. I mean, I would love to hear some of the insights as to how John Williams comes up with some of his stuff. But he's probably
he listens to Holst.
Huh?
He listens to Holst, and he writes his theme music.
Yeah, in part, I suspect there's some of that, because his early stuff, man, there was a lot of stuff that sounded strangely familiar to British music, which is where he got most of his training.
Well, what I found fascinating about the theme song writers is they have to create the mood for the TV show or the movie within about 20 or 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to, what was it? The Mission Impossible sequence, where that theme is instantly recognizable these days to even people who've never seen the TV show.
It's James Newton Howard, by the way. Not Howard Newton.
And another good movie worth seeing that's apropos to this topic is 20 Feet from Stardom.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was on Netflix not so long ago. Yeah, clap.
Yeah.
Wow, what a spectacular documentary. So it's about the backup singers from the 60s and the 70s. Who you probably, you know their voices, but you just don't know them by name.
Yeah.
And they you know, they're fabulous musicians, but for whatever reason they didn't become stars, but they had, you know, big careers nonetheless.
Yeah, well, it's
with
like
some ups
Marnie
and
Nixon.
downs.
Marnie Nixon sang for so many other actresses and performers in musicals, and she was their voice. She was actually, I guess, initially part of the Robert Shaw Chorale, and then branched out into doing, you know, basically Hollywood singing for people who couldn't.
Well, she was famous for doing Audrey Hepburn and My
Yes.
Fair Lady.
Yep.
And she did Peggy Wood in The Sound of Music.
And she did
and West Side Story.
Yeah, West Side Story. She did some of the stuff in West Side Story.
By the way, if you haven't seen the new West Side Story, I highly recommend it. As good as Coda was for the Academy Award, I would have voted for West Side Story.
What did you like mostly about it? The production or the story?
The production.
Yeah.
And it was much more realistic and gritty than the 1960 movie, which is still outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, Spielberg was the one behind the latest version, and he stuck with, he made it unusual. I haven't seen it, but he made it a breakthrough movie because the Hispanic cast is actually Hispanic.
Oh, yeah.
And there were, I don't think there was anybody except, it wasn't Cheetah Rivera. Oh, she's getting into her 90s now too. Rita Moreno.
She was excellent in the movie. I think she won an Academy Award for it.
Yeah.
And she's been, there've been a number of interviews with her lately.
The most ironic part of the movie was when it was clear that the gangs were fighting over land that was subject for total demolition for urban renewal in New York. So the whole thing was a big waste of time.
Well, the movie, the first movie was actually made in an area in New York that was indeed scheduled for demolition.
It was Lincoln Center.
Lincoln Center.
In fact, the new movie has an opening scene with a urban renewal sign. Look at the new Lincoln Center that's going to be at this site. They actually dug up one of those old signs.
Oh, wow.
So this whole thing was more of a tragedy than the original film, which was based on the Romeo and Juliet tragedy.
Yeah.
So why didn't they cast somebody? They cast Ansel Elgort as, you know, one of the lead characters, and he's not Spanish. I wonder why they didn't find somebody for that part.
I don't know.
Tony is not Hispanic. That's the whole point of West Side Story.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Duh. All right. I'll shut up now.
No, that was a good softball pitch.
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, you know, when they announced him, I'm going, what? I couldn't imagine him being the part of Tony. I just couldn't imagine.
If you have access to HBO Max, then everyone.
Yeah, I saw the movie on HBO. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it on HBO Max. It's still there.
Yeah. I liked it because it was available the opening day on HBO Max, so I did catch it. It was actually no, I think it was a little bit after that. Whatever.
By the way, does anyone have any software that can capture videos off HBO Max?
I tried something that was supposed to capture from every single streaming services. I looked at it for 4 months before I finally spent the $300 for it. And that they guaranteed I'd get my money back if it didn't work. And it was kind of a mess. All the services I wanted, it was supposed to do Apple TV Plus, supposed to be Netflix. It was supposed to do them all, but it worked to varying degrees, and none of them would capture. They claim, I wanted the 4K captures, and they claimed it only did it for one service, and even that didn't work well. A lot of time you got 480
wow.
download.
Did you get your money back?
Yeah, they did, surprisingly. Right away, they did give me the money back. So,
I mean, they couldn't claim it was your equipment, so what's...
No, they knew, and you know, I went on the forums, you know, there, and everybody was complaining about it, and they said we're working on it, and they must have to because they change all the time. If you
what's happening is that it's a rat race between the servers and the downloaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
There might be a way to do it if there's an HDMI signal available, because you could buy a relatively inexpensive HDMI to USB converter for about $100, made by, I think it's Elgato. You can get it on B&H, and that will take an HDMI signal and put it into your computer if you have video recording equipment or a video recorder within the computer, and you can actually record the HDMI signal, and it will give you whatever's coming through. As I say, this little gadget, I don't remember. I think it's around $100 from B&H. It's an Elgato. It's small.
You mean it breaks the HDMI encryption?
It's basically it allows you to take an HDMI signal and feed it, converts it to a USB input. And as far as I know, now I haven't tried it with an actual HDMI protected signal.
Make sure you can get your money back.
But isn't the problem that the streaming service comes in over your internet, and that's got to go into the box and be converted to go out an HDMI port?
Yeah, it's the Camlink. It's $129. It looks like an overgrown thumb drive.
Yeah, like Ken said, make sure you can get your money back.
And it's designed to take, it's designed, I mean, I have one just in case I want to take something out of a camera and port it in HDMI quality, but it has an HDMI port. Now, what version of HDMI it's designed to have?
Yeah, but when you do your camera with HDMI, you're not encrypting the signal like a studio is.
But if it's going onto your TV from a cable box or your internet box, either your TV has to have the decryption system built into it.
It does.
Oh, it does.
The other end of the HDMI cable.
Okay.
It's not in box. Okay.
So if you're tuning into Netflix or something or HBO, you can't just plug it into any HDMI input on a TV?
Yeah, you can. Look, I haven't studied the details, but my understanding is what's it, HCP something, HDMI copy protection, HDCP.
Yeah. And there's different levels of this, 2.0, 2.1.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, generally, copy protection, that's static because they're not changing the keys because they can't get in your TV. Eventually, someone reverse engineers it and they build it outside the US and hope customs doesn't seize it and it gets here.
What would you be recording with it?
Oh, streaming services.
Movies?
Yeah.
You can just buy the disc.
Yeah,
that's true.
If it's available on disc.
And much better quality. Most of these streaming services are compressing it, even though they may claim it's 4K. So if you can get a Blu-ray or a 4K disc, that's better.
The issue is a lot of this material is not even available to purchase on media. I've been looking for a copy of Jesus Christ Superstar. Alvin and I've been looking for that and hoping they would do it in 4K. It was an NBC broadcast. They finally put out a copy, but it was just in Blu-ray. That's it. And 1080p. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even in Blu-ray. It was just 1080p DVD.
Yeah, but how did they record it? If it was one of the live broadcasts, did they use 4K cameras or 2K?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming that was, I don't know. I would think it'd be 1080p. They probably didn't spend the money on 4K. But if it's on a DVD and not a Blu-ray, you know what? I got to check.
Since there's no broadcast in 4K, my guess is their studio equipment's not 4K.
Yeah, but they could still master it in 4K, do a capture, and then down-res it. I mean, it's crazy not to, I think, for, archival purposes. I would think you'd want a 4K master of it.
That was a live show, so it was almost certainly done in
1080.
Do you know about the website blue-ray.com? It's a good source for Blu-ray discs. They tell you what's coming.
And if you mention 1080p or 1080 anything DVD, that's not possible.
No, yeah.
DVD is not.
No, DVD is 480.
Yeah.
Let's see.
The formats are DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K for media.
There are several good non.
Isn't there a 720
freeway.
DVD?
What's that?
Isn't there a 720 DVD?
720 is HD.
Yeah, that's Blu-ray.
720/60 is what ABC uses for broadcasting, or is that's what they?
Yeah, most Blu-rays are 1080p. They don't bother with 720.
Yeah. Well, the TV broadcasts of 1080 are 30 frame interlaced, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, one of the things I found when we tried using 1080, if I used it initially for some sporting stuff, you kind of get a strobing effect because the action, although it's at 30 frames a second instead of 60 frames a second, you do get some, I don't know quite how to describe it, but you get, it isn't blurring. It's more like, well, if somebody, shoots a hockey stick, you see frozen pictures but it's very rapid. So you see a series of stuttering things going through with the 30i.
Mm-hmm.
And the progressive, you don't. The 60 progressive, you don't see that. We wound up going to 720/60 for recording concerts because the conductor's baton literally would strobe all over the place.
I remember seeing a congressional hearing that Ed Markey, the Massachusetts senator, held when he was member of the House, with two tables, and one table had the computer industry arguing for progressive, and the consumer electronics industry saying it's too expensive, we're only going to build interlaced. And the two fought it out until they had the grand compromise with 720p and 1080i.
Not the consumer electronics industry, the broadcast industry, which had to deal with the bit rate that was available for television.
Yeah.
I just note in passing that for an audio group, we've spent a amount of time talking about video here.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other these days. I used to be fascinated. Some of you have seen my studio space. And way back in the day when I first built the room and put in the Klipschorns in either corner of the room, I'd bring people in, and I had a little 13-inch Panasonic monitor that came, actually it was B-stock that came out of the Olympics in Atlanta from Panasonic or one of the TV stations or something. But it was a nice, very good 13-inch standard def TV. And I used to play the Balrog scene out of the Lord of the Rings, right? And it's maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes from the end of that particular segment of the movies series. And I couldn't get people to leave. They would sit and look, and this was from like 6 or 8 feet away to this little 13-inch monitor, and they wouldn't leave because the sound was so spectacular. And that's, it's a great way to educate people to say, the sound really matters a whole bunch in this stuff. Because if you don't get good sound, the movie can fall apart pretty fast. So that's, something that I think maybe it's getting to the point where the crossover between the two, because video is becoming just a common thing everywhere. Even I've seen people even doing professional video recording using cell phones. They'll set up cell phones on stands and shoot the video with a cell phone.
Sure, you see that all the time.
Yeah, and well, you also can get 4K into the cell phones now. And that's pretty impressive quality if you want to, then download it and mess with it.
Yeah, there's lots of YouTubers doing that and doing live streams.
Yep. And the cameras are getting very small and very sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
So why does everybody shoot vertically?
No, most of the YouTubers are now putting it on gimbals, and especially the ones who are doing video tours of cities and countrysides. When I had to cancel a number of trips to Europe beginning in 2020, and I discovered that I could travel vicariously with these video clips.
You know, they sell basically stabilizers and motion sense devices.
Yeah.
We stumbled across one in a theater that I was getting set up to do a recording, and basically it looked like a steering wheel, except it was, you know, like a go-kart steering wheel. It was horizontal. It was rectangular, and the phone was clamped in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So you could literally move it around and use it.
Oh, they have ones you just hold at the end of your arm and
Yeah.
walk. There's a guy on YouTube calls himself Gabriel Traveler, who has spent at least 25 years of his life roaming the world.
Wow.
He's technically an American and he lives in Oregon. He revealed that his home address is a storage locker in Portland, Oregon. And every other day of his life, he's on the road somewhere. Today, he's in an island in Greece.
Wow. The trick is that once you get the footage, then you got to figure out what you're going to do with it and edit it.
Oh, that's a lot of work. And
no kidding.
He makes roughly $50,000 a year on his YouTube and ancillary merchandise and stuff, and his ad revenue with Google, and that's his life.
Yikes. What a way to go.
Hey, Ken Schwartz.
Yeah.
You said the sound on Qobuz is better.
Yes.
Are they using high-res sources or something?
I don't know where they get their sources, but it's the, you know, sometimes they're remasterings. And so that's, of course, a different story. But what I'm listening to is their 24-bit version of something, or their 96K sampling rate, or the 192 sampling rate. They've got all different things. But sometimes I'm comparing it with a really crappy, low res copy that I got from somewhere. And so in those instances, the differences are really marked and unmistakable. But even against a CD that I've put onto my hard disk drive and I play back from that versus these higher res versions, you can hear more little details, little echoes, and the bass is more, is tighter, and it's better. There's no question about it.
Sometimes it's related to the chain of processing that they go through. I mean, you look at everybody's trying to get the perfect sound in their rooms, but they're playing back commercial audio, which has been run through microphones, 32-channel mixing consoles, heaven only knows what kind of FX equipment, and then they go into post to make the CDs, and the CD hardware or software can do absolute magic on all kinds of things. And by the time you get done running through a chain like that, and then somebody else decides to take the raw audio and do it their way, yeah, you can get very interesting differences in the same master recording, just by how it's processed.
Yeah. Well, I'm not talking about something that has altered the artistic presentation. I'm talking about something that seems to me to be a technical difference. So there's subtle differences, but consistently, these high-res versions seem to be better than what I've got, just on my hard disk drive from my CDs. So
we've got to test it.
Yeah, well, we could have a double-blind session here at the Schwartz Lab.
Sounds like a mix-up between codecs and DACs.
There's no way to test it because you can't be assured that you have the same source material for both things.
I know. Well, all we can do is test these examples and say, yep, they're different. but you're right.
No, if you had a
And
clip
I
that
will,
was the
I will
exact same
say,
timing.
I will say that, I mean, there's a bunch of mysteries. For example, I have an Eric Clapton LP, and this is a new LP. I bought it only a few years ago at Tower Records. And oh no, I got it Barnes and Noble, excuse me. It wasn't Tower, it was Barnes and Noble. They were selling records of all things. Anyway, so I got this thing, and it goes through my DA converter because it's got to go through the crossover. I've got the crossover is over there. So it's getting digitized before it goes into my amplifying chain. Yet coming off the turntable, I got to tell you, it's more dynamic than the version that is straight digital that you can stream. So mystery of mysteries. The LP is adding something wonderful to the sound.
The streaming service might be playing games too.
Could be. Anyway, it's one example, but it's surprising. You know, there's a certain sound that the turntable has that it sounds good. I don't know what they messed up the music somehow, but it's all right.
No, turntables are this has been studied for 50 years. Turntables add wonderful treble roll off and LF grunge at a low level and random L minus R and R minus L. So turntables are analog signal processing at its most euphonious and most random.
Well, it works. Sounds good.
No, it does work.
We've done this particular example. It sounds terrific.
Yeah, no, turntables often.
The good news is that the digital processing that goes on after it leaves the preamp and before it gets to the amplifiers, it seems to do it no harm.
I've got a strange theory about LPs too, where the stereo part comes from the left to right movement of the stylus, right? And if the two sides of the groove have different noise in them that's not correlated, you'll get a sort of a pseudo stereo pink noise coming off of the surface of the disc that doesn't happen in any other medium like CD. Is that wacko or?
No, that sounds
plausible.
And related to the general increase in L minus R and R minus L that you get off a cartridge. And it varies by cartridge, of course.
Yeah.
Even the mounting of the cartridge, the tone arm system, the turntable.
Yep, that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will tell you, if you want to bum out, take a test record with tones on it and attach your oscilloscope to the output of your phono preamp and take a look at how horrible the signals are. I mean, they're visibly bad. And yes,
sure.
a lot of crosstalk and a lot of problems. Yeah, so that way lies madness. Still, it sounds okay.
No, but it sounds so good.
Yeah, amazing.
Low frequency did it.
But listen to a damn LP.
That's a
50
good way
years.
to put it. Grunge, random grunge and random ambience and roll off. The big thing is roll off. Even the fattest cartridges.
I need to leave, but I just wanted to ask you about an email I keep getting from a company called Blue Coast Music, supposedly offering uncompressed audio.
Gotta be a scam.
Uncompressed audio of what?
Yeah.
There is no such thing.
What's the question? Everybody offers superior audio.
They've got to have
somehow got on their mailing list because I saw them 5 years ago at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Buy it or unsubscribe.
I think I'll do the latter. I'll unsubscribe.
Okay. Dodge that.
Tell them to join the BAS.
So we need all the members we can find.
Okay.
Yeah. Quobuzz, that's what you want.
Even that. Okay, Quobuzz.
Anybody else?
Question, this is Bob Klaza from Detroit, Michigan. Have you had any recent BAS meetings live and in person?
No, not really. I will note that next month, on the 30th, we are having a live presentation. In March 2020, we were scheduled to have Orchard Audio present their digital amps, Class D, and streaming products and D-Day converters and things like that. But due to the onset of COVID, that meeting was carried virtually over Zoom. And he's has agreed to come back and do it again, as it were, but live this time. It'll be at the community center in Lexington. So we're getting organized. It's going to be from 2 o'clock to 4:30, whatever, on a Saturday, the 30th. And, you know, bringing in speakers and cables and sources and all that stuff so that we can listen to his amps. He has suggested, by the way, that we bring in headphones because some of his streaming products have headphone jacks, and he would like to be able to demonstrate their quality. So we're starting up. I don't know if it's going to become an all the time thing, but we're starting up the live meetings again because, yeah, I mean, we can't really talk about equipment without really listening to it and being together in one place to do it. So,
what day are you saying, Nick?
It's Saturday, July 30th.
July. Ah.
There was a live BAS meeting, as I recall, which I attended via Zoom, but it was outdoors in some.
Oh, you're right.
Thing.
It was at that same venue that Nick is telling us about, except they lost power.
That was the
so we couldn't put anything in.
That was the Shoe subwoofers.
Yeah, and it wasn't live. I mean, the meeting guest was virtual, was
right,
digitized.
Yeah,
he was remote. We were local, and we all sat around a picnic table outdoors because the venue's indoor power went out. Had nothing to do with COVID.
Right.
Oh well. But
yeah, the Pacific Northwest AES section is having live meetings in person now also.
It's back.
It's good. That's the best way to go. I mean, if you want to really see and touch and hear products, I mean, you got to do that.
There's also a group in the Detroit area that meet and play LPs on turntables and listen to them. And they had a meeting last Saturday that I understand a bunch of people attended, and they were carrying in the records to listen. So things are turning around. I'm just wanted to get other feedback from other places to see how they're doing. So we can maybe get our Smootums meetings, the Southeastern Michigan Woofer and Tweeter Marching Society, back on track and meet live. The last time we did that was over 2 years ago. So, and we haven't met live since, but we've been meeting every other month on Zoom.
The Boston AES section does not have meetings according to their website. I mean, it's been a couple years, like most of us. Sorry, like most of the others.
And the COVID is still out there because we've had friends and so forth. It's the Omicron variant apparently, which is reasonably benign, but it's terribly easy to catch it. And it probably won't knock you on your keister if you've been vaccinated. And in fact, what was it? Pfizer claims now they've got a reconstituted vaccine for booster that's more effective against Omicron. But it's, I think a lot more people are wearing masks these days, but I never thought I'd have to go into a bank wearing a mask and ask for money.
Yeah, I had COVID about 3 weeks ago.
Ouch.
Ouch.
It wasn't bad. It was like a cold, but we should maybe keep in mind whether or not we're going to ask people to wear masks. It's still out there. I got it 3 days after my second booster, 1 day after seeing my doctor.
Wow.
He gave it to you.
Maybe. I don't know.
If you have an indoor meeting, it must be masked. If you have an outdoor meeting, it's arguable, but
yeah, what I've learned from people mostly that I've heard of within the last week who contracted it, they've been flying and had been stuck in airports for several hours, and coming home from after their trek, the plane was probably safe, but apparently the airports aren't.
No, all the plane filtration turns off when it's sitting, waiting to take off, and then before disembarking. And every medical article talks about how good the new filtration systems are, except for that period of time.
So the idea is to get on the plane while it's taxiing down the runway.
Yeah, chase after it like Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Kind of foolish.
Stephen, who says that we have to be masked in a indoor setting?
It's no requirement. There's no law on that, right? Those are all dropped.
That's what I'm trying to find out.
I didn't say it was a law. I said it was rational.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I think.
No, you said we had to be masked.
That's okay.
That's semantics.
Yeah,
that's his opinion and mine too.
Yeah.
The question is whether the BAS has to say something.
As someone who is immunocompromised from a kidney transplant and immunosuppressive medication, I don't go anywhere indoors without a mask and without a requirement that everyone else be masked.
Okay. You should do masked and vaxxed.
Oh, yes. Vaxxed as well, for sure.
Well, during my last visit to a doctor's office, the signs at the very front door and all within the examination rooms said, you must wear a mask and you must keep it on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
same here.
Yeah, hospitals are still requiring it. Yeah.
Yeah, and most clinics are too.
Yeah, if you go get PT at a physical therapy clinic, same thing.
Yeah.
The people that are wearing them don't know how to wear them, and their nose is sticking out over the top.
Well, we don't have that problem, but you do see a lot of that on TV for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick, I wonder if we should close it down. It's 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're done, I think we're done. Are we not done?
Yep. No, I think we're done. Right.
Okay.
It was done about 10 years ago. Well baked or half baked, one or the other.
All right.
Anybody.
All right. Thanks, guys.
We're fully baked.
Nice work, John and Ken. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Ken, let me know when the video is available and I'll download it and get that posted. And I'll tell you when I pull it off the site.
Okay, super.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, all. Stay healthy.
Yeah.